Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with a new video. I apologize for looking, well, kind of ratchet. uh, I'm working from home today and I'm very tired. Ooh. As you can see, but I wanted to give my opinion on this person's opinion. So hopefully you can overlook my less than kempt appearance and hopefully listen to what I have to say. Because this is something that keeps coming up from time to time in conversations about video games. And as someone from the old school, I very much have an opinion on it. I have an opinion on this person's opinion. Right, so here's what I don't even know what you call this. I I don't even know how to say it. Let's just call them id or id. I don't know. Spawn something. This individual, right, says opinion. All video game boss fights should have an option to skip them, and then they go through this trying to explain and justify this position, saying that video games award achievement for those who beat bosses if it's important for the player, right? And then saying they don't understand the opposition to skippable boss fights, and if it were an option, one you wouldn't use, then don't use it. And then, of course, sort of the sarcastic lashing out, right? About the quote tweet saying "get good," right? They're mostly youngsters who don't remember permadeath games. Honey, I'm 36. I'm not a youngster, and I remember permadeath games. I remember when Nintendo's tagline was about how challenging the games were. I remember games like Battletoads and Revenge of Shinobi and Terminator and all that stuff. But anyway, right, and more responses, right? So this person uh, pretty much just starts sort of uh, kind of like clapping back, and to each their own. But I want to in particular address this notion, right? This idea that video games should have uh, the ability to basically skip any sort of challenge, right? A boss fight. There was drama a few months ago about what was it, Psychonauts 2, and the possibility of that game featuring cheat codes to be easily accessible at the beginning of the game, right? Kind of like in the options screen. So there would no longer be these hidden codes as they traditionally have been, but now they would just be available just like any other setting. Now, I am vehemently against this particular mindset of making cheat codes easily available or skipping boss fights, right? To the point where I am actually offended by this. I try not to take too much offense to things, but this is one of those things where it's like, okay, you really have pissed me off now. And let me explain why. It's not just a matter of a generation gap, right? It's not just a matter of me being from an older generation and then having a different viewpoint on things. To me, the real question is, what is a video game, right? And in my opinion, if you make cheat easily available, or in this case, if you skip boss fights, then you are violating one of the core principles of a video game, which is challenge, which is competition. Because here's the thing, video games provide various types of challenges, right? It's not just in the boss fight, it's not just in, say, in a fighting game where it's you versus the computer or you versus another person, right? Challenge is integral to video games, whether it's you versus yourself, right? You versus your high score, you versus the video game's high score, you versus the level, right? You versus a horde of, enemies, which is something that is standard in many video games, right? In particular, a lot of action games, right? a horde of enemies come upon you, and you have to get rid of them all to progress, right? The challenge can be a time attack challenge. Right? The challenge can be um, a puzzle, right? A lot of games have puzzles. They're actually puzzle games, but then you have action adventure games, for example, Tomb Raider, that have puzzles, and even games like, say, Resident Evil, right, feature a few puzzles. Even games like Tetris, right, or Pac-Man have challenges, right? In Pac-Man, the challenge would be, each level itself, right? Because each level is designed differently. And then, of course, you have the four ghosts chasing you around. And in Tetris, right, the challenge is to see, how far you can get, how many levels you can get before inevitably you fail, and you can't get the blocks out of the way fast enough, right? In each level, the blocks come down faster and faster and faster, right? All of these are challenges in a video game. All of these, in one way or another, can create a fail state. You can lose. For example, let's say you're going super old school and you're playing the very first Super Mario game, right? You can lose because you run into a Koopa, or one of those other uh, um, enemies that you find on the levels, and you're at Small Mario, right? If you run into it, right, you're dead, right? The other one is the level itself, right? If you remember the old school Mario games, right, there were a lot of gaps, right? Gaps you would have to jump. If you miss that jump, you fail, right? In fact, that's exactly why I never finished the original Super Mario in all these years. What is it, like level 8-1 or level 8-2? There's this huge gap you have to jump. I could never make that jump. I never finished it, right? But that's another example of a challenge where there's no overt enemy involved, right? You're not attacking another character. Another character isn't attacking you. It's not a boss fight per se, but it is a challenge that prevents you, if you don't figure out a way how to get past it, right, from progressing in the game and finishing the game. So video games have always been inherently about challenges, about encountering challenges, and about finding ways to overcome them. I was watching some videos recently from a YouTube channel called Designing 4, right? And there were these two great videos, one on the level design of the first Super Mario game, and one on the four boss characters from Street Fighter 2, right? So, uh, Balrog, Vega, Sagat, and Bison. Or, if you got the original Japanese version, the boxer was Balrog, Claw was, no, sorry. Boxer was M. Bison in the original Japanese one, because it's based on Mike Tyson. So in the original Japanese one, the boxer was Mike Bison. Balrog was the man with the mask and the claw. Then you have Sagat, and then Vega is the dictator. I think it's fairly common knowledge now, but for those who may not know, the reason why the names got switched when the games came to America is because they didn't want Mike Tyson potentially suing them. Since Mike Bison, right, or as we call him here in America, Balrog, pretty obvious who it's based on. And given Mike was, one of the biggest well-known athletes in the world and the baddest man on the planet, they didn't exactly want to get into any sort of confrontation with him. So there's all that. Right, but as I was saying, my point is that this channel made great videos about the level design in the very first Super Mario game, and the four bosses from the original Street Fighter games, right, and how those bosses actually teach you how to master the um, the different styles of gameplay, or different fighting styles, right? There's zoning, there's anti-zoning, right? For example, Balrog, although he uses charge moves, right? He's this very aggressive, rah rah rah, right? Always coming at you, pressing you, pressure, trap you in the corner type of fighter. And most people who play charge characters like say Guile, right? Like back forward punches the sonic boom. 1 second. You usually play that type of character a bit more defensively, right? And here was Balrog actually being the attacker, right? Right, being on the offensive, despite being a charge character. And Vega and the other three bosses, sort of showing how to master the other types of gameplay found in the Street Fighter games. What I really like about these videos from Designing 4 is that it shows how much thought not only the person making the content put into all this, but how much thought it was put into the game and the characters and the controls or the level design or whatever it is themselves, right? Because what these games were really trying to do in many instances was teach you how to play. They were trying to teach you how to play the game without overtly stating that. Of course, over time, things like uh, tutorial levels became commonplace. But there was a lot of thought put into these games, right? And trying to teach the player without being overt about it, about how to play the game, about how to progress. But the only way you can teach them that is if you put an obstacle, if you put a challenge in their way, something they must overcome, a boss fight, if you will. Right? A boss fight for an individual person isn't always necessarily the literal, boss you have to beat before you can progress in the game. It could be any point in the game where you're simply struggling. That's your boss fight, right? It doesn't have to be the one sort of built in by the game itself. Any part where you're struggling is a boss fight. And as anybody who has overcome a struggle knows, right, the sense of accomplishment that you develop after you've overcome that, right, that cannot be replaced. And the reason why you have that sense of accomplishment is because you did something that was difficult. You did something that perhaps maybe you didn't think you could do. Whether it be getting past a certain point in a video game or it could be real world things, right? Maybe you didn't think you could beat that vice, right? Maybe you didn't think you could get that job. Maybe you didn't think you could talk to that guy or that girl. Maybe you didn't think you could get that guy or girl to go out with you or marry you or whatever it is, right? The sense of accomplishment that you feel when you overcome something that was especially difficult, the only way you can get it is by overcoming. It's through the struggle, right? The obstacle is the way, as the phrase is sometimes said. You will not know achievement if you don't know adversity, if you don't know challenge. And just as a person, I cannot wrap my head around this idea of taking something that has always been built and always been predicated on providing a challenge, on teaching people how to play the game and how to overcome the challenges in the game. And now you want, and again, this is just this person's opinion, but opinion, if it's shared by enough people and it gets signal boosted enough, these companies see it, and what was once an opinion then becomes standard. And that's my concern about this, that these ideas could sooner or later actually be present in a video game, right? But this idea of taking all the challenge away, taking away any adversity, any type of fail state, anything where you could lose or be defeated, not only is it antithetical to this thing called life itself, it simply takes all the fun out of a video game. What is the point of playing a video game if there is no competition? if there is no adversity to overcome? What is the point if there's nothing to challenge you, to demand that you step up and win, or be better, or learn something, or improve? Honestly, what is the point? It's it is not a mindset that I understand. Honestly, I don't. I don't. Right? And of course, this person's saying, well, it could be optional, right? But I don't think it's an option people honestly should have. And I'm all for customization in games, but I think a line has to be drawn, and I think the line is here. It's not an accessibility issue. It doesn't help individuals who have disabilities that make it difficult to play games. All this is basically saying I don't want to have to actually work to beat this game. Give me all the praise and accolades for beating the game, right? But don't make me actually have to work. Like, here's the way I view it. Me being an older millennial, right? My generation, perhaps somewhat rightly, was labeled the participation trophy generation, right? The 70s and 80s kids, they were the latchkey kids, or at least they got labeled the latchkey kids, and the me generation. My generation sort of got labeled as, being the kids who didn't want to grow up, right? We were labeled as having Peter Pan syndrome, being late bloomers, failure to launch, and those type of things, right? I think in some instances those labels apply, and I think in others they're just insults. It depends on the situation. But I will say this much. While I personally never took to the whole participation trophy or everyone's a winner, everyone gets a prize mindset, because my life literally just did not play out like that, being that I grew up watching sports or various forms of fighting or martial arts, or playing sports and getting into fights or whatever it was. My life and the things that I viewed and admired and everything and consumed as a player, as a viewer, right, in my real life, just never played that out. But I will say this much. Even if those labels are true, even if they apply, even to earn a participation trophy, you had to try. You had to participate. You had to put in an effort. Now it seems that for some, I want to be clear, I'm not trying to necessarily label the entire Gen Z or whatever you might want to call it, but it seems that for some, they want to go from having to at least make an attempt to get some sort of acknowledgement, right? So it's gone from winning the participation trophy for at least trying to now I don't even want to try, but give me the Super Bowl title. I don't want to try, but give me the NBA title, right? I don't want to try. I don't want to put in the hard work it takes to get to the end of the game and to win the big one, but treat me like I did, right? Let's not and say we did, right? Treat me as someone who really worked hard, although I didn't do a damn thing. All right, although because I skipped everything. But yeah, I played the game and I finished it just like everyone else, except I skipped everything like it's a cutscene. This is not a mindset I could ever understand or get behind. And in my opinion, it's just something that should never be. A video game should never have, in my opinion, skippable boss fights unless you're talking about optional battles, right? That's a popular thing in like our RPGs, right? There'll be optional battles. You have to go and find, say, optional items like the super cool armor or the super cool sword, right? And so you go out of your way, right, to go do those optional journeys, and in those journeys you have a boss fight, right? I don't think those should be skipped either, but they are by definition options. You don't have to go. For example, you don't have to fight Diamond Weapon or Ruby Weapon, right, in Final Fantasy VII to beat the game, right? You fight them if you want to, if you want to take on that challenge, but it's not a requirement to beat the base game itself, right? So that's about the only place where I think of an optional boss fight that you can avoid if you want to. Outside of that, no, absolutely not. Video games should not have skippable boss fights. They should have skippable cutscenes, right? But they should never ever ever have skippable boss fights or any sort of challenge, right? That you can just literally just skip over just because it's too difficult for you, or you don't have enough time to play because you're an adult now and you have adult responsibilities. Inconvenience, because that's what this all boils down to in the end. Inconvenience and your very fragile ego are not reason enough to put skippable boss fights or any sort of skippable challenge in a video game. It is antithetical to what a video game is. So, as much as this person may not like the phrase, get good, scrub, and stop looking for the easiest way out. Because this is beyond even playing on easy mode. I have no problem with an easy mode. I played plenty of games growing up and well into my adulthood on easy mode. This isn't even that. This is simply take any and all challenge away from me. I don't want this. And well, I can't go for that. No can do. But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day or night wherever you are. Bye.